In the space of one person's lifetime, China has pulled off one of the most dramatic transformations in human history. In 1949, it was a nation shattered by decades of war and deep poverty. Today, it's a powerhouse in technology, finance, and manufacturing, with ambitions so vast they stretch from the deepest parts of the ocean to the surface of the moon. So, was this all just a historical accident, a lucky break in the chaos of the 20th century? Or was it something more? The story of China's rise isn't about a single secret document, but an evolving, multi-generational strategy to reclaim what its leaders see as its rightful place in the world. It's a vow to avenge a century of humiliation and restore China to the center of global power. The answer will change how you see the world. To understand this ambition, you first have to understand the pain. For most of its long history, China saw itself as the center of the civilized world, but the 19th century brought a brutal shock. Starting with the First Opium War in 1839, China entered a period it now calls the Century of Humiliation. Foreign powers like Britain, France, and Japan used their military might to force the ruling Qing dynasty into a series of unequal treaties. They carved of territory and imposed their will. Hong Kong was taken by the British. Foreign armies marched through Beijing. The empire, weakened by corruption and rebellion, finally collapsed in 1911. This trauma of being subjugated by outsiders left a deep scar on the national psyche. It forged a powerful, unifying desire that would drive the decades to come, to make China strong, to restore its sovereignty, and to guarantee it would never again be at the mercy of foreign powers. This vow, born from shame and fury, became the psychological engine for the revolution and the grand strategy that followed. The 1911 revolution that ended the dynasty didn't lead to a strong, unified China. Instead, the country fell apart, ruled by competing warlords and torn by a civil war between the nationalists and the rising Communist Party led by Mao Zedong. In 1949, after a brutal conflict, Mao's forces won and he stood in Beijing to announce the founding of the People's Republic of China. For Mao, this was the official end of the century of humiliation. He famously declared, "The Chinese people have stood up." His first goal wasn't just to rule, it was to build a powerful, independent state, totally free from foreign domination. Mao unified the country under a single disciplined party, creating the strong, centralized state that had been missing for over 100 years. But his methods were catastrophic. The Great Leap Forward, a radical plan to rapidly industrialize the country, led to one of the worst famines in human history. The Cultural Revolution, a campaign to purge society of old ideas and his political rivals, plunged the country into a decade of violent chaos. While the human cost was immense, from the long-term perspective of the national strategy, Mao had achieved the crucial first step. He forged a strong, sovereign state, but he left the economy shattered and isolated. After Mao's death in 1976, the chaos of radical ideology gave way to a new pragmatism. Deng Xiaoping emerged as China's new leader. Having seen the disasters of Mao's campaigns, Deng concluded that the Communist Party's survival depended on delivering economic prosperity, not just revolutionary purity. His guiding philosophy was famously practical. It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. This was a revolutionary idea. It meant that results, not just communist doctrine, would guide China's future. Deng launched the era of reform and opening up. He broke up Mao's collective farms, allowing farmers to sell their surplus for a profit. Most critically, he established special economic zones along the coast. These were essentially capitalist laboratories where foreign companies could build factories, hire Chinese workers, and export goods, operating with far more freedom than anywhere else in China. The world had never seen anything like it. Foreign money poured in. Hundreds of millions of people moved from the countryside to cities, fueling a massive manufacturing boom. China became known as the world's factory. The game changer came in 2001, when China joined the World Trade Organization. This move supercharged its growth, plugging it directly into the global economy and cementing its role as a dominant hub in international supply chains. In just a few decades, Deng's pivot lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty and launched China on a path of unbelievable growth. He had accomplished the second crucial step. He made the economy powerful. But being the world's factory was never the final goal. It was just a phase. The strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. Trade cheap labor for Western money and technology, learn everything you can, and then use that knowledge to build your own industries. The massive profits from exports weren't just pocketed, they were reinvested into modern highways, high-speed rail, world-class universities, and huge R&D programs. By the 2010s, the next stage of the plan was in motion. China was no longer content just assembling iPhones. It wanted to design them, build them, and dominate the key industries of the 21st century. Ambitious plans like Made in China 2025 were announced, with the explicit goal of becoming a world leader in AI, quantum computing, biotech, and electric vehicles. At the same time, China began to use its economic power to reshape the world. In 2013, President Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road Initiative, a colossal global infrastructure project. The plan involves China funding and building ports, railways, and power plants across Asia, Africa, and Europe, creating a new web of trade with China at its center. By the mid-2020s, around 150 countries had signed on in some capacity. The strategy was no longer a quiet ambition. Its effects were being built in concrete and steel across the globe. This brings us to today and the era of Xi Jinping. Xi has articulated the plan's ultimate objective more clearly than anyone: the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. This vision, often called the China Dream, is the target for the year 2049, the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic. The official goal is to become a prosperous, strong, democratic, civilized, and harmonious global leader. However, the party's definition of democratic is not a multi-party system, and under Xi, China has in fact become more centralized and authoritarian. Under Xi's leadership, the era of hiding strength and biding time is over. China is rapidly expanding its military, asserting its territorial claims in the South China Sea, and openly challenging America's global leadership. This has set the stage for what many now see as the defining geopolitical contest of the 21st century, a contest between two very different models for how to run a country and exercise power. Out of the ashes of humiliation, a national ambition was forged. Mao built the sovereign state, Deng built the modern economy, and now their successors are using that combined power to try and reclaim what they see as China's historical position as a leading world power. This wasn't an accident. It's been a multi-generational marathon of national revival and raw ambition, with each leader building on the work of the last. As the 2049 goal approaches, the question is no longer if China is a superpower. It clearly is. The real question is, what does a world with a fully risen China at its center look like, and is the rest of the world ready for it? If you found this look into China's grand strategy fascinating, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world.